I was asked to speak tonight to describe a little bit about what the college is doing currently with BIM and talk a little bit about future possibilities with the college and BIM. I should just explain that I am not a BIM expert. I am just starting my learning journey on figuring out how to use BIM in my particular program. I'm about 2 years into it, but hopefully I can show you a little bit what I've learned so far and what the college is doing. So I'd like to start by sharing a project that my students do. This is the TCIC bid competition. It's hosted out of Toronto. And it's a national bid competition where about 10 colleges, about 80 to 90 different teams compete on completing a full bid on a building. Each year the project seems to get a little bit more complex, and this year we're kind of lucky that the project ended up being in Nova Scotia. This is the Citadel Hotel redevelopment that Bird Construction did about 4 years ago on Brunswick Street. So this is about a $50 million building. One of the groups that did this building, he was having a hard time trying to understand how the foundations were put together, and so this particular student, his name is Young Lee. He has a background in architecture, so he went and put together a model of what he was bidding. He built this model completely from scratch, and what he first was trying to figure out was specifically how the foundations worked. One of the challenges was there was many different steps with the foundation, and he had to kind of figure out where the different pad footings were and where the different spread footings were for the drops. And with this, he can actually start to figure out the sizes and so on, and the concrete quantities for the different heights of the walls. So he put this model together over a week, and then the model actually generated the quantities for him. So we've been doing this competition for about 5 years now. And this year was the first year we actually won the competition. So out of 87 teams, we were first place competing here. We won first place for most accurate complete, and then second place for closest to target. So as an alternate to doing the BIM or the bid competition, my students also do a BIM research project where they go out and interview companies that are using BIM and ask specific questions. And each year we change the scope of the project and we ask different questions. And that's why I call this industry feedback a little bit unofficial, because it's done by students. This year the group went out and polled 21 different companies and asked them first, are they using BIM? And out of the 21 companies, and these are local HRM companies, only 6 came back and said they weren't using BIM. Now, when we dove a little bit deeper into those details, and I have a transcript of all the questions they asked, we kind of started to realize that although they checked the box for using BIM, their level of understanding and appreciation for BIM was at all kinds of different levels within these companies. Another trend that we noticed when we were interviewing companies is that most general contractors in the Maritimes do not have a dedicated BIM department. They have BIM experts, but they don't have that full support of a department yet. The companies that are national with satellite offices here, they have BIM departments, but they're usually located in central Canada, western Canada. Another major trend that we noticed when we were polling the companies is that they seemed to indicate there was this constant theme that there was a lack of understanding of BIM and a certain limited skill set with new employees when they came into the market. And of course, that's where the college can help. Now, I'm also out there talking to companies every year. Every spring, we do a work term with our students. So I'm out there visiting the companies that my students are working for. And when I first started having these conversations about BIM, the industry was a little skeptical. Some people weren't adapting, some people weren't interested. But what I found over the last 4 years is that narrative has kind of changed. Companies are getting more interested, more optimistic. Even if they're not using it, more and more companies are actually getting interested in the process of BIM and trying to understand it. So right now I'm going to ask my colleague to come up, Barb McDonald here, and Barb's going to talk a little bit about what kind of courses we're teaching here at the college for BIM and what kind of projects her students are doing.
Probably can't see me. Maybe I'll move out. My name is Barb McDonald, as he said. I am an architect, and I teach in the architectural drafting and the architectural engineering technician programs. Primarily, I teach construction methodology and commercial design, and so the goal for me is to have my students develop a full set of commercial working drawings for a building from design brief. They do the design, they do conceptual, they do site analysis, they do a lot of stuff by hand up front, and then once we get the conceptual design approved, then we do preliminary design in Revit. They learn Revit slowly throughout the 2-year program. They're introduced to Revit in the first year as a level 1, in the second semester of the first year, and in the second year they do a level 2 and a level 3. So in addition to that level 2 and level 3 in the second year, they are applying it to their commercial design project. So they learn not just step by step out of a textbook, they learn all the troubleshooting aspects of doing work on a drawing, on a model. In addition, we changed it. We introduced Revit in 2010, and 2 years later, we changed from AutoCAD to Revit for our commercial design, which was a big switch because at the time I didn't even know how to use Revit. So I was having to one step ahead of the students. So we have our 3 levels of Revit, and then this year we have a proposed BIM concepts course that's to be introduced. In addition, in civil engineering, they do a Revit structures course. And in the civil, they also do Civil 3D. And in our mechanical technician course, mechanical drafting technician, we do Inventor. One of the things that, since we started doing our commercial design in Revit, one of the things I have to be cognizant of is the level of detail and making sure that the students understand when they should be doing accurate modeling versus when they should be using detail lines, and when they should be doing the details in AutoCAD versus Revit. And I've found in the last 6 years that it has changed every year. And so I keep contact with my program advisory committee, and I have industry members that I touch base with to find out what they're actually doing in industry. An example of that would be pilasters on a foundation. The pilaster section is lowered where the steel is connected to the foundation. But for the last 4 years, we were actually modeling that, and it was causing a lot of grief for the students. It was taking a lot of time. And when I contacted my local structural engineer, I found out they actually do use detail lines. And I am aware that if you're going to use that model for estimating concrete and things like that, it's important to do accurate modeling. But it's going to depend on what the client wants. And so we have to try and do a broad brush with our students and make sure they understand how to do it. But I don't want them going out into an office place and spending a lot of time doing modeling that they shouldn't be doing. So just having them understand that they should be asking what level of detail is important for us. And I'm learning this as we go. Last year, I didn't even know there were a level of details. So we're still learning ourselves as faculty. This is an example of one of this year's projects. Top left is an exterior render. Bottom left is an interior render of cafe. Our commercial design project is tenant spaces on the lower level with an open office plan on the upper level. And the thing that you should understand about this is it's not just my course. We have a CAD course that marks the same project. The Revit course marks the same project. The architectural engineering technician students use this project in their estimating project. They have to estimate all the quantities. We also have structural engineering in the architectural engineering program. They do the structural steel sizing, and they do a complete steel model using the same project. So the project is very important for the students. It's integrated across our mechanical and electrical for the architectural engineering. That's why we do open office on the second floor, is so they can use that project to do their air distribution and their HVAC design. So it's used in many of our courses, so it reinforces it for the students. We also do group work so that they learn how to use a shared model. And we use A360. We've been able to get space on A360 so they have access to that model everywhere.
So also at the college offers a couple different ways that instructors and staff can go out into industry and do some of their own learning. So this would be specific to BIM. There's two specific things I'd like to talk about. There's FLCP, Faculty Learning College Portfolio, which is a 5-year plan to study a set of goals related to what you teach in the program you're in. So we have a few faculty that are currently doing that. We also have another option where you can go back for either short-term leave or for a long-term leave, 4 months up to a year to return to industry, where the college will actually pay for instructors to return to industry and study your gold and figure out things that are being done currently in industry, and then bring that information back to the college and into the classroom. So some of our instructors in our department right now, Krista, she's in the civil department. She's almost completed her 5-year FLCP. She's been studying stormwater management and modeling. Kirby Raycraft, Kirby Raycraft is 2 years into his FLCP, and he's studying BIM. He's in the architectural engineering program, and he's studying BIM in order to figure out where we are across Nova Scotia and even Canada and how to integrate that into the college curriculum. Mary Francis is another instructor in the civil program, and Mary Francis has just been granted approval to go on an educational leave for 1 year, and she's going back to industry to study civil 3D design and surveying. Myself, I'm in the middle of a 5-year plan, also developing BIM programming for the construction management program. But I'd like to mention something with these leaves here. They all require strong industry support in order to be successful. Okay, so every one of these instructors had to reach out to industry and get letters of support and figure out collaboration and sometimes even become an employee of that company in order to fulfill the goals of these different leaves. So what does industry need? I should start off by qualifying that most, if not all, of our programming here at the college is in some way a response to what industry needs and what employers need. The question for BIM is, how will industry be using BIM in the future? And the college is more thinking long-term out, so 2 to 5 years, and even if I could ask 10 years out. And I know that's a very hard question for technology that's moving fairly fast, but it's something we have to think about, at least get a snapshot of. Our issue, our problem, our challenge that we have is that we have to be really diligent on how we collect this information and how we use it. To change curriculum at the college, it takes, a 1.5 years to actually make a substantial change in a program. So adding a whole new part of a program, creating a new program, we're talking 1.5 years before we can make that change. So it's quite important that we have a good partnership with industry to try to understand what these future trends are before we actually change anything. Saying that, though, we can ask right now, well, what are the skill gaps in present day that employers are experiencing? This would be the starting place to asking this question. So what I tell my students, I'm teaching you to have an entry-level skill, a toolbox for say, that you can use on your first day of employment, your first week, your first month. So that's the challenge with BIM, is, well, what's in that toolbox? in order for a student, a graduate of NSCC, to be successful in your company. So the idea I have, and it is kind of, happening a little bit already, my idea was creating a BIM center of innovation here at the college. This center could probably be virtual in the beginning, but ideally it should be a physical space, a computer lab with a subject matter expert, someone that knows applied research from industry, but could be a support for students and faculty. And then all of our other programs that are currently using BIM, kind of in silos, can interact with this center. So our architectural and engineering design department, doing that conceptual stuff, they would create the model and interact with the model. Go over to, for me, I'm a little bit, you should be more at the end here. I would be doing the construction management side of things, estimating, scheduling, and so on. Geomatics, surveying, point cloud scanning, that kind of stuff. We have a surveying department where they already have drones and point cloud scanners, but we don't work with them to scan buildings. They're scanning things like ships and so on. So how can we bring that into building and architectural sciences? The civil and municipal and structural design to get integrated into the model. Mechanical and electrical systems that can be put in the model, check for interference, clash detection, but also for prefabbing and shop drawings. And then, of course, drafting, which should have been the second one that I mentioned. Drafting is going to be detailing the model, looking at different problems and issues to make the model work. Now, my idea for this model is it's a collaborative center for the college. We're fortunate to have 5 of these programs right here in this campus. But there are other programs across our 13 campuses that aren't integrated with this. So one of our challenges here at Nova Scotia Community College is that we work remotely with other campuses. So how can we be more collaborative in creating this situation? So because I'm a project manager, I like to plan things. So I started thinking, well, how can we do this? How can we roll this out? And I kind of looked at it as a 3-year plan. The first year I see it as it being more of an internal exercise where from the grassroots down, the instructors get together and figure out how can we make this work? How can we, between programs, talk to each other and actually set some objectives for learning? In the second year, I kind of see it as when we bring industry in and set up focus groups. And really what I'm seeing is I think we're looking for a partnership with industry where we can actually set some objectives together for this learning and so on. And I also see it as an opportunity for applied research at this stage. And then in the third year, I think this is when we can start piloting a BIM lab virtually or in a physical space and figuring out how do we make all this work, okay? Collaboration being the big word here and figuring out how do we collaborate virtually or face-to-face and so on. At this stage of the game, we would have our subject matter expert, hopefully with applied research and industry experience, to help guide teachers and students on what we're trying to achieve. So where do we go from here? So I do believe after researching BIM for 2 or 3 years that it's the future of our industry. The college needs good feedback from industry to help support and shape the direction we're going. But we have some challenges. Projects in Nova Scotia are typically smaller in size. We don't have the same economy of scale of some other centers across Canada. Our projects typically aren't above 100 million or more. We have a lot of smaller projects. And the same is kind of true for the college. We have small class sizes here. My graduating class this year is 30 students, and that's a big year. I mean, other colleges are graduating 200, 300 students. So we have to figure out something that works for a smaller construction project and a smaller class size. And really what I'm saying is we need a BIM solution that works for Nova Scotia. Thank you very much.